Okay, now I'm very excited to introduce our next speaker. He's going to be talking about zero-click records management case studies. A couple questions came in about that. And his pitch is how federal agencies automate website archiving and FOIA requests. With us is Peter Bolton, Director of Enterprise Sales Solution Advisor with Pagefreezer. He's a frequent contributor to DGI programming. His expertise is in electronic record keeping and assisting agencies manage data such as website content, social media channels, text messages, and enterprise collaboration platforms. Peter, thank you again for joining us.
So yeah, thanks everyone for joining. Thank you, Mike, for organising, and thanks for the previous presentations. Really great content. And yeah, just one of the questions actually was, are there any examples of how agencies have kind of reached zero-click records management? And that's kind of what I'm going to show today. So follows on really nicely. I know a lot of folks on here will have heard me speak before about some of the work that Pagefreezer does, and some of the challenges specifically around online data sources, in particular website, being able to manage website records, website archiving, and also it could go into the world of social media. I know Catherine mentioned social media and just the amount of data that can be generated across these. So yeah, this is some specific examples that we've kind of touched upon in past webinars. And I just want to share with you the challenges that some of the agencies had, the kind of stories around what brought them to actually start looking at how to better manage these records, essentially. And yeah, the zero-click concept is not a term that I previously kind of used, but it was really interesting to hear the zero-click, because I think after utilizing technology to help manage some records, you can actually reach that zero-click concept. So that's what I'm going to speak about today. Go to the next sheet. That's me. Brilliant. So just an overview of, yeah, as I say, we at Pagefreezer, we really focus on helping agencies with the specific challenges, requirements around being able to manage website records, social media records. It could even go across Microsoft Teams records. So just kind of briefly, a brief overview of some of the challenges. And again, it links back to what's been said previously, is that this is highly unstructured data. Social media, for example, constantly changing, new records being produced. It could be in the context of an agency's website, which is being updated. It could be multiple times per day that content is being updated, whether it be new information that's being published, whether it be a change in policy. So it really is difficult. It really is constantly changing and unstructured. So that's kind of the first challenge that we look to help, and where agencies have had, is how do we get the automation, the zero click of actually collecting and managing these records. The next then is how we help actually with the FOIA side of things. Is is there a way in which zero click can be achieved in actually reproducing these records? Actually, if there is a, say, FOIA request for consent from a website from, could be, say, a year ago, how do we actually retrieve and produce that information when required? So those are the two kind of challenges that we see, and these are a few examples of how we've got there with certain agencies. So the first example is with the FDA. So this is a number of years ago now, going back to the heart of the COVID-19 pandemic. As you can imagine, this placed a huge amount of pressure on the FDA, and there was a particular focus on FDA websites. Huge amounts of FOIA requests were being received for content, particularly, from various information around the pandemic. They already had a large backlog of FOIA requests. They also had the challenge of actually needing to capture those records because the website was being updated frequently. New information was being published, and they needed a way to improve transparency was a key aspect to actually be able to manage and collect those records, those website records. Look to meet NARA requirements, and they were looking for a way to essentially reduce the manual work that was going into actually, first of all, needing to collect the records and also to be able to reproduce them for FOIA requests. So it was never discussed to be a zero-click approach, but essentially that was the ideal scenario, was that how can we look to improve what we're doing here? How can we actually look to automate every aspect of this approach around our website? And that's kind of where Pagefreezer came in, and through the use of technology, and this is just an example of how, Pagefreezer's web archiving, we began to automate, first of all, the collection of the web content on a daily basis. So that meant that, there was 0 clicks required, essentially. So I'm not sure how many clicks was required previously to actually go on and capture, but it was a lot. And you'll see here, this is an example of the FDA's public portal, as we call it, but this is where the FDA have actually published their web archives on the website that are available to the public. The key aspect with them being able to then publish their archives was that the records were available for anyone who requested it. So the results were that, we were automating the capture of 100,000 web pages around, so huge amounts of content. I think that links back to some of the challenges around needing to capture. There was reduced time there to actually work on other projects that were critical at the time. The FOIA requests that we saw we see 5,000 around searches a month for content. So you see how that offsets the actual formal FOIA request process. It's kind of a self-click, 0-click again process, improved transparency, and being able to scale the records management of the websites across their entire public footprint, and also on a much more regular basis. And just being able to have all of those records in one place in a structured approach, I think it's the term to use. Brilliant. So the next example is with the Department of Education, who, so this is a slightly different challenge that we see. So we saw the FDA's challenge was really around, lots of challenges around FOIA, the pandemic. Now, the Department of Education over the past 2+ years have undergone a huge web modernization program, which essentially means this is something that we're seeing a lot across many different agencies in trying to improve their communications via the website, trying to update websites, to look at reviewing content which may be outdated. And essentially the main goal was that they launched 22 brand new websites, approximately 150,000 pages, and they needed a way in which to archive the older content before the new content and the new websites were launched as part of this program. So again, very similar requirements. The difference is they didn't really have an automated way to capture the sites, spending hours and hours trying to archive it, and they were looking for a 0-click solution. And again, we helped them collect all 22 websites which are being maintained and again published on their actual website. So you can go on and check these out on the link that you see here. And again, it's an example therefore of being able to achieve 0-click with the actual collection, organization of these web archives. And again, from a FOIA point of view, completely make it a self-serve exercise, and again, 0-click for those who would otherwise have to respond to these FOIA requests. And I think a good example here was, again, a challenge that I've often spoke about, I know Catherine just mentioned as well, was the involvement of IT in actually collecting, being able to maintain a website. It required heavy IT involvement, and the Department of Ed was a really good example of teams collaborating from digital communications, from IT, from our records managers to actually be able to come together and achieve a solution. It is a really doable exercise. It's something that can be achieved. So that's a good example there of that taking place. And you'll see here's an example of the Department of Education's archives with Pagefreezer that you can go on and view. Fantastic. And finally, we come to the Department of Health and Human Services. So on a webinar, some of you may have heard myself and Kelly Smith from the department speak about kind of how they approached the project. And this is just, again, a further example of achieving 0-click when it comes to website captures. So the Department of Health, the major challenge was they were directed to archive their whole web domains. It was part of a previous administrative transition. And they hit several delays, a lot of frustration, a lot of resources being put into this, several members of staff essentially working full time to try and actually capture the sites. FOIA requests, again, were backlogged. There was no real automated solution. And they wanted to approach this and see how can we automate, how can we reduce the challenges with capturing, and most importantly, how can they meet NARA requirements here, because they were only capturing the website on a very sporadic basis. It was very unstructured. And again, the Department of Health approached Pagefreezer. We helped them to automate 0-click the capture of their entire web domains, again, tens of thousands of web pages each day, and again, be able to publish that content to assist with FOIA requests and achieve that 0-click status when it comes to FOIA. And you'll see, so this is a really good example. Kelly gave really good feedback on the amount of time that this has saved, help his team be more efficient, work on other projects. So hundreds of hours of work that was eliminated. We saw, a 30% decrease with open records requests, FOIA requests for the specific content. And I really increased the scope. And this was a great example of starting as still quite a large project within the agency, but this has been rolled out across multiple departments, like the FDA, for example, across the Department of Health. So it shows it can start small, but really expanded to help other agencies, and a really good example of that taking place. And this is just a quote here from Kelly that, switching to Pagefreezer, 900 hours per year that saved, a 30% reduction in open records requests. And I think this is a good example of the 0-click concept being applied, and how really that can be positioned within an agency as being this is kind of what we're looking to achieve, and this is kind of the return on investment, if you like, of that project, and the benefits that can bring to a particular agency that is spending a lot of time trying to manage the records that we're looking at. So fantastic. So this is just as an overview. There's lots of, this was just an example, a small example in the world of a huge challenge around records management, but I just wanted to yeah, give us some practical examples of a small part of the records management process that can be tackled. There's lots and lots of challenges around in general, and it is a huge ask when we say zero click in general, but this is just a couple of practical examples of a set of records, this case website records, that agencies have achieved that zero click concept. Fantastic. So any questions? Yeah, please feel free.
Peter.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
One question for you, and then we'll go to the poll question, and then I'm going to introduce JD. And I asked the same thing at Catherine. What advice would you give agencies that are just starting to explore automating website archiving and FOIA requests? Is there a lot of prep work they need to do? What advice can you give them, Peter?
It's a good question. The first part, I would first of all, I think the biggest starting point is identifying each agency's requirements around what is trying to be achieved. So that could be, how often do we want to be collecting websites? What does that want to look like? And what is the policy direction? It can change from different agencies we've seen. And then the next kind of bit of advice on approaching actually getting a project kick-started is identifying who needs to be involved. So as I say, that often involves, of course, records management, but it can also go across digital communications, those who are actually publishing and own the content that's going onto a website. And it will inevitably involve various IT departments, security, so on and so forth. So I think that would be my advice, is really identify who needs to be involved, bring them into the project, and that can really kickstart the process. And that's what we've seen with some of the agencies that we've looked at, is that was when it was a successful approach, was when it was everyone who needs to be involved and who this would touch was involved.
Well, Peter, thank you and Pagefreezer for the excellent presentation today and your continued support. We are now going to go to our poll question. Have a great day, Peter.
Thanks.
We're going to go to our poll question. Okay, regarding the zero-click records management case studies, the 3 he just shared with you, this is your opportunity. If you are interested to have a Pagefreezer subject matter expert contact you to continue the discussion, or B, forward a copy of the presentation that you just saw with Peter and details on those 3 case studies, or C, A and B above, or D, nothing at this time.